Are you ready to take your first steps towards financial freedom by investing in property? Whether you're a first-time investor or you've started your portfolio but need some help continuing to grow, 2022 REB Buyer's Agent of the Year and Rising Star finalist Lachlan Vidler and his team at Atlas Property Group are here to help. As experts in property investment, Lachlan and his team are ready to help you take your next step in growing your portfolio. By completing the research, sourcing and negotiations, Lachlan goes the extra mile to find you a high-performing investment property. Visit atlaspropertygroup.com.au to book in your discovery call absolutely free of charge.
This is a Momentum Media production.
Welcome to the Smart Property Investment Show, the podcast by investors for investors.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to a brand new episode of the Smart Property Investment Show. As always, bringing you the latest and greatest in what's going on in the investment world. Today, I feel like it's a very important time for us to be looking at what's going on around the states across Australia. And we've done that a little bit recently. We've looked towards the Northern Territory and Victoria, what's going on there. But we've been lacking a little bit in South Australia. So I thought it was about time that we brought on the Real Estate Institute of South Australia CEO, Barry Money, to the show. Barry, welcome. Thank you so much for your time today.
Grace, g'day. It's absolutely fantastic to be on the show. Thank you for having me.
You are so welcome. You only really came into this job not even 18 months ago now.
No, it's 13 months ago now.
That's quite recent, but what's it been like over that period?
It's been a fantastic ride. You know, I'm now a proud South Australian. I've travelled around the world, but South Australia is now home, and I'm really, really enjoying everything that South Australia has to offer. I'm loving the job, I'm loving the industry, and I'm just loving Adelaide.
I know you did move there for the role, but I feel like it is quite reminiscent of what we've seen kind of across society. A lot of people moving away from maybe Sydney or Melbourne or wherever else they were for a tree change or a sea change, whatever that might have been because of the pandemic. Was that a contributing factor for you considering a move to South Australia?
I think that was one of the factors, and I think it's certainly a factor that's playing out in some of the macro trends that we're seeing in the market in South Australia. But for me, it was really about the transformation of South Australia, and particularly Adelaide, from, a traditional manufacturing location to one that is now future-focused, innovation-focused. And I've been looking at Adelaide for quite a while. It also helps that it's the city where my wife and I had one of our first dates. So we have this romantic notion about Adelaide, and we wanted to come back and live here.
There you go. How cool is that? So, talk us through then, in the 13 months you've been there, what you've sort of been seeing play out across the real estate market, obviously, from that perspective of being the CEO of the Real Estate Institute in South Australia.
Well, I think firstly, you've got to look at South Australia as a destination. I think we're now a destination rather than a departure point. We used to lose so many of our South Australians to other states, in particular Victoria, New South Wales and Queensland. But now we're experiencing net positive migration for the first time in 30 years. Now, that's an amazing stat for South Australia, and it's actually an amazing stat for the property market, but also, I guess it kind of reinforces the success of Brand SA, the transformation from this manufacturing and agricultural state to an innovation state. We're the festival state, and now we're the innovation state as well. We're attracting a lot of people here.
I'm sure it's quite an invigorating thing to be part of, to be seeing, so much growth, so many people wanting to come to South Australia. What's the sentiment like around, the population growing? Obviously, attached to that, you've got house prices seeing increases. There's a lot of tech out and about. I've seen that popping up with Lot 14 and all of that kind of thing. So, what's the feeling like to be in Adelaide and South Australia at the moment?
Well, it's really buoyant. The optimism is certainly there in the state economy. I think the optimism was there at least until Russia invaded a friendly and peaceful neighbour. I think we have been buffered in South Australia by this net positive migration, by the innovation that's happening in the economy compared to perhaps some of the eastern states. I think also there's an interesting dynamic going on at the moment in South Australia. We are, and I will boast now, we are the most livable city in Australia. We're the third most livable city in the world. And I think that's attracting people post-pandemic. I think people are looking for space, freedom, livability. And now what's happening is that as people are looking for those factors, future-focused and employee-friendly corporates are chasing that livability factor. So we're attracting PwC, Amazon, Google, Salesforce, Accenture, these larger organizations that are looking for, highly productive employees.
Yeah, sounds like it. You sort of jumped into what my next question was going to be a bit there, Barry, which was sort of around the fact that you guys have, I don't want to say come through the pandemic unscathed, but you have been less impacted than the eastern states. How much has that kind of helped that livability index? Or do you think that was kind of already all existing and then it's just kind of been exacerbated by the pandemic's effects elsewhere?
I certainly think South Australia has always had a livability factor. We've got great agricultural plains, and we've got a fantastic coastline. We've got a CBD that has everything that you can navigate in a relatively short period of time in Adelaide. We've got great suburbs and we've got great residential areas within a stone's throw of the city centre. But what's happened with the pandemic is that has been exacerbated. And I think people now with hybrid working arrangements, they're looking for space, they're looking for more flexibility, they're looking for more freedom away from the commute and the 9 to 5. And South Australia offers that. I think the regions have certainly been a beneficiary of that. You can't get a rental property in the regions at the moment for love nor money. So I think what's occurred in South Australia is we had the livability factor and now that has come to the fore and the population's maybe diffusing from the CBD out through the suburbs out into the regions.
We're going to take a quick break there now, Barry, but straight after that, I want to see what that means moving forward for SA because I do feel like there is a lot going on. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back in just a second. Welcome back. We are chatting with Barry Money, the CEO of the Real Estate Institute of South Australia. Barry, just before the break, you were talking about how livability had come to the forefront of thinking for so many Australians, and that's helped so much with positive migration, which is really, really cool for South Australia, especially considering it's been so long since they've achieved that. We're obviously seeing a reversal of a very, very long-term trend. And it does make me wonder how long you see this trend continuing to play out, especially now that we're probably, hopefully, seeing the end of the pandemic affecting the Australian way of life. So is this something that, potential investors or people who are maybe thinking about making a move down there should be focusing on? Will we still be seeing people coming to your neck of the woods?
Well, look, absolutely, Grace. I think if we look at the data over the past 12 months, interstate buyers and those with primary addresses outside of South Australia have more than doubled in terms of penetration of residential sales. They've gone from 5.25% to 12.8%. So we are attracting more interstate buyers and interstate investors, professionals as well as investors looking at, what have traditionally been great yields in the rental market, but also we're seeing that capital growth now. And let's just talk about that property market trend because, the confidence in South Australia has translated to record sales and record prices. 90% of all of the suburb median house prices have increased, and 90% of that 90% have actually increased by double-digit percentage figures. So until now, we have seen a great mini boom in South Australia, and I would have said that that would continue for the next 12 to 18 months, and I still say that, but now with a caveat. We've seen the invasion of the Ukraine by Russia, and obviously our hearts go out to all of the brave souls in the Ukraine. But I think what that's going to do from a global economy point of view, we're already seeing it at the petrol houses. Energy prices are increasing. Australia's a big country that's run on diesel, and the cost of that has to be amortised somewhere into goods and services. That's going to have an impact on household bills. So the discretionary income that we built up over the past, 12 to 18 months with no travel during the pandemic, I think that's going to be eroded. And to a certain extent, that's going to dampen the confidence nationally in the renovation market, in the investment market, and in the property market. To a certain extent, I think South Australia's a little bit buffered by that. And I think certainly the opening up of the international borders to fully vaccinated travellers and visitors will assist with buffering that. But I think we need to look now at what's happening globally and what will happen as a result on the property market.
It's a really good point to make, Barry. And I think as well, I guess adding to your point there, the fact that a lot of people have seen South Australia as a cheaper place to live, do you think that will continue, I guess, to work as that buffer to potential price losses? That's
another great question, because if you look at South Australia in a vacuum, we've increased, as I said, for the best part in double-digit percentage growth terms. But if you compare that to the eastern states, we are still a really good investment. And in fact, if you liquidated in the eastern states and moved to South Australia, you would be able to afford a great property and an investment property to boot. So I would suggest that South Australia will continue to be a great investment, and even more so now because, complemented by those traditional yields in the rental side, we've actually got the capital growth now. And I think with our economy as it's growing and as we're transforming to an innovation-focused economy, we're attracting great corporates who attract great professionals, great employees who all need shelter.
For sure. So what have some of those, we've talked about house prices having increased over the last couple of years, and a lot of them by more than 10%. Where are you sort of sitting at about now, and where do you expect that to be by the end of the year? Obviously, barring some of those, geopolitical issues that have arisen over the last couple of days.
So look, in South Australia, the median house price has gone from $441,000 in the fourth quarter of 2020 to $515,000 in 2021. Now, if you look at that in a metro Adelaide, context, it's gone from 510,000 to 600,000. So there's a 12-month change there of about 17% in metro Adelaide. Now, of course, there are plenty of million-dollar suburbs, but there are some still great investment areas within great commuting distance of the CBD, and there are a number of developments that are popping up around the place as well. Even if you look at the regions, while the median house price has gone from $272,000 in the fourth quarter of 2020 to $295,000 in 2021, buying a property in the regions is a great investment because we have so many seasonal workers in many of the regions who require rental property. And that's another one of the trends that we're seeing at the moment, Grace. We're seeing, vacancy rates as close to 0% as we've ever been. So investing now in not just a good economic investment, but a good social investment as well in terms of providing shelter to many people who are suffering at the moment from lack of rental properties.
I really like that you bring up that, as well as being a financial decision, investing in property can also be a social decision. And I mean, it sounds like at the moment that you don't really have to be sacrificing one for the other in South Australia. Is that fair to say? Just with considering how low those vacancy rates are, there's obviously a lot of competition going on. What's some of the sentiment in the industry around, from property managers and even agents that are dealing with this firsthand?
Well, from a property management perspective, I think it's been really tough. And I think it's been really tough on a number of players. It's been tough on the property managers who have managed 40 applications for one rental property, shall we say, and having to reject 39 applicants to that single property. But it's been tough on the 39 who obviously are not getting a look in at the moment. And there's another trend we really need to be mindful of in the industry, and that's the mental health of some of these players. The property managers are doing it tough. And obviously the renters, the tenants who are looking to get into rental properties, they are struggling as well. So this is a social challenge as well as an economic challenge. From an investment point of view, of course, we're still getting great returns. Rental returns on average in Adelaide have increased by about 7% year on year, and that's an average number, of course. But I think if we're a little bit more social about this actually has a philanthropic perspective to it as well. We're providing shelter to those people who are looking for shelter.
Absolutely, Barry. We're going to take another quick break there. We'll be back soon with more from the CEO of the Real Estate Institute of South Australia. Welcome back. We are chatting with Barry Money, the Real Estate Institute of South Australia CEO. Barry, just before the break, we were talking about, so many macro effects on the market at the moment, and we barely scratched the surface there. I want to bring up first home buyers as a market segment because I feel like, considering how much prices have grown in South Australia, but the fact that as well that they are still much lower than the Eastern Seaboard, and that is kind of fueling some of that migration towards the West and towards South Australia. Talk us through what you're seeing with first home buyers in the market at the moment, because just from my perspective, this whole what's going on in South Australia at the moment feels like, a textbook example of how a city and a state can revitalise itself after a pretty extended slump, for want of a better word than that.
I think revitalisation is a great word to describe what's happening in South Australia. I think a lot of young professionals are coming home to South Australia, and with that, they're looking to purchase their first home. We have a first homeowners grant, which is, up to $15,000, but that's for a home up to a maximum price of $575,000. Now, considering that the median price in Adelaide for a house is $600,000, I think that first home buyer support is probably lagging. We've just seen the federal government pass through Parliament the increase to voluntary contributions to the First Home Super Saver scheme, where first home buyers can save for their first home within their superannuation. But considering, super returns are, 6, 7, 8% on average, and, the median house prices increased in the past 12 months by 17%. Again, I don't think that's enough. So what I think we're seeing is the move to apartment living, the move to units and to a certain extent townhouses. The median price has only increased by 8% in the past 12 years. And there was a supply during the pandemic of units available, certainly in the CBD. So I think we're seeing those younger buyers moving towards units and apartments rather than the now more expensive houses.
It's interesting you say that because I've never really thought of South Australia as an apartment or a unit market, but I guess, it makes sense when the city is building up and becoming, more appealing to many of those white-collar workers from the East Coast. The natural result is that you're going to start seeing that kind of housing pop up.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, you're absolutely right. South Australia, and particularly Adelaide, has not really been an apartment dwelling city, but we've got some great developments around the place. We've got some great developments in the CBD, and I think there are about 130 developments happening across the CBD, both residential and commercial. And the city skyline is transforming before our very eyes. And then further afield for younger families and perhaps lower income families, there are some great developments out to the north. Riverlea Park is a huge development that's underway at the moment. That's a great investment. These are selling like hotcakes at the moment. And out towards the east, about 30 minutes away from the CBD, in a place called Mount Barker, there are a number of developments underway. That's a great little community for younger families. They're building out the infrastructure, not just in Mount Barker, but to Mount Barker, the roads and transport infrastructure. And the prices are, again, comparatively affordable out in that area as well.
I've got a lot of green flags going up in my brain at the moment, Barry, from what you're saying, because it sounds like even though there is so much development going on, none of this is diluting the value that is being seen in the South Australian or the Adelaide markets.
I think there are a number of factors at play there because South Australia and Brand SA is appreciating day by day as we're attracting more optimism and investment into the state. We need supply. We need shelter. That supply is constrained. The costs have increased because of, the pandemic impact. The construction costs, labour, materials have all increased. They're constrained from the point of view of access to materials. So that's increased demand, but also obviously it's still a great place to live. It's a great place to bring up a family. It's the festival state, so we're fun and also we're a damn good investment.
There you go. So do you have any top tips of some of those, locations where investors who are looking to, put up some rentals or move into the city or the state, are there any spots that people should be looking out for in particular?
Yeah, look, there are some great locations. I've mentioned two of them already, Riverlea Park and Mount Barker. They're developments that are happening at the moment. But, if you're liquidating in the east and you're moving to South Australia, anywhere is affordable. But also the regions represent a good investment and a good return. I mentioned earlier the rental crisis, and that's even more exacerbated in the regions. I would be looking at some of the seasonal work regions where we have, workers who just can't get rental properties at the moment, Renmark out that way. And if you're looking for a great suburb on the coastline, you can't go past Victor Harbour. It's less than 90 minutes to the CBD, but it's an amazing destination. Prices are still affordable compared to the East Coast, but the living there is just out of this world.
Barry, it sounds like there's a lot to look forward to in South Australia at the moment. I think I might plan a trip over there as soon as possible. But what's kind of coming up for the next year or two? You've talked a little bit as well about, developments going up. Infrastructure must be a big one, and just, I guess, even some of the things you've already alluded to earlier. What are your expectations for the year ahead?
We're 19 days away from a state election. and both sides of the political divide have made a number of promises, as you can imagine. A lot of that is focusing on health and health infrastructure, more beds, more ambulances, but there's a significant investment in tourism, Riverbank Arena, which is a huge convention centre, which will now be able to host amazing conferences in huge volumes in South Australia. All of that is bringing professionals, investment, tenders to South Australia. And with that comes the onflow to the property market. So I actually see the South Australian property market as continuing its mini boom in the next 12 to 18 months, albeit with the caveat of the Russian invasion of Ukraine and the impact on, household bills, inflation.
Yeah, that's definitely something we'll be following closely, on the site over the coming weeks and months, because that could obviously have some pretty global ramifications on that. And I really do appreciate, Barry, that you have brought it up today, because it's not a very nice situation that Ukraine is finding itself in the moment. And hopefully the resolution brings good news and comes sooner rather than later. But at this time, we don't really know how it's going to play out. So I think, it is worth paying attention to that and being mindful of that, whatever you're getting up to this year. But Barry, as CEO of the Institute in South Australia, what have you guys what will be your role over the next year? I guess monitoring of a lot of these things will be very clearly in your sights.
Yeah, look, absolutely. We're keeping a watching brief on a number of factors, not least of all the RBA and their movements, inflation, wage growth, etc. But I think the role of the Institute in South Australia is to bring the property community together and to unite behind one strong voice for the industry, for investors, for agents, for property managers. And in May 2022, we're launching Recon SA, the Real Estate Industries Conference for SA. This is a homegrown destination event for agents, service providers to the industry, investors, and the general public. And that will be over 2 days on May the 19th and 20th at the Adelaide Convention Centre. We've got some of the best speakers. We're bringing them from interstate now that we can, of course, now that people can travel, now that people are vaccinated. We're bringing some of the best keynote speakers and the best service providers to South Australia. We're riding the crest of the wave of the innovation that's happening in South Australia. We're at the forefront of that as REISA. And I'm really proud as CEO to say that we're hosting this homegrown innovation, PropTech and industry event on May the 19th and 20th. Make sure everybody comes to Recon SA.
It's very cool. And as you said as well, it's very on brand with what's coming out of South Australia at the moment. So enjoy the event. Good luck with it, Barry. And thank you so much for your time today. I feel like it's been so enlightening to touch on some of the topics that we've talked about. And I really do think our listeners will agree that, if they're not already looking at investing or working in South Australia, maybe it's something that they need to be looking into.
It's time to come to SA.
One big ad for the state, really.
There you go.
Big tourism push. But Barry, again, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure to chat with you today.
Thank you, Grace. Lovely to speak to you. See you next time.
To everyone who is listening at home, in the car, in the gym, wherever you are, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please like or review us on whatever platform that you do use to listen in. And if you have any questions, do not hesitate to reach out at editor@smartpropertyinvestment.com.au. Stay up to date with the latest news on our website as well as our social media. But that is all we have time for today. Until next episode, stay safe and well. Bye-bye.
The information featured in this podcast is general in nature and does not take into consideration your financial situation or individual needs and should not be relied upon. Before making any investment, insurance, tax, property or financial planning decision, you should consult a licensed professional who can advise whether your decision is appropriate for you. Guests appearing on this podcast may have a commercial relationship with the companies mentioned.
Looking to secure finance to maximize your returns on your investment property? Finny can help. With access to over 70 lenders, Finny can find the right finance for your unique situation. So whether you're ready to refinance for a better rate, improve your cash flow, release equity to grow your portfolio, or are looking to find the right finance for your next purchase, we're here to help. Visit finny.com.au today to learn more.